1994 has been a tough year in jolly old England. The national side failed to qualify for the World Cup. Thousands turned out to watch the Tour de France, where English riders were buried in the peloton. Don't even mention Wimbledon. Now more than ever, England needs a hero. For 2 seasons, Formula One driver Damon Hill has tried to fill that void. The son of world champion Graham Hill, Damon stepped into the Williams Renault and won 4 times in 22 races. But that hasn't been good enough for England. Last year in his home Grand Prix, Hill led most of the race until his car let him down. His pain was shared by a nation. You see, Hill follows in the tracks of Nigel Mansell, world champion. Last week, Mansell returned for 1 race in France, dropped out near halfway, but the press trumpeted Mansell's gallant effort. And oh yes, Hill finished second. That's enough, says Damon. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Today is my race, the British Grand Prix. I've come here to beat Michael Schumacher and win this race and try to turn this championship around. ESPN, the world leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha with Derek Daly alongside. Welcome to the British Grand Prix at mighty Silverstone. For this event, the last race of the first half of the Formula One World Driving Championship, Formula One returns to its roots, to the ancient village of Silverstone in the English Midlands. This is the site of the very first Formula One race back in 1950, an event attended by royalty and won by an Alfa. We've talked about Damon Hill, but of course, the man leading the World Championship right now is Germany's Michael Schumacher, having a dream season with 6 victories in 7 races, and but for a broken gearbox, would have made it 7 in a row. With 6 victories, he joins elite company, including Ascari, Fangio, and Andretti. If he can take his 7th, he'll be among Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna, and Jim Clark, world champions all. Should he go on to 8 in the second half of the season, he'll join Ayrton Senna, who did it back in 1988 when McLaren drivers Senna and Prost split 15 of the 16 races. And 9 wins would take him to the record set by Nigel Mansell in 1992. Derek Daly, now let's turn to the matter of the moment, the new Silverstone circuit.
Well, 3 years ago, Silverstone went through a total and dramatic facelift that changed its design and indeed its character. Well, millions of pounds later, that still wasn't good enough for this year's Grand Prix, so the bulldozers moved back in again and carved out some new paths. There are many, many familiar and famous names at Silverstone, and Turn 1 is still Copse, but now it's different. Look at our map. It's shortened, much slower, and a big gravel trap on the outside. Move to Beckett's. A subtle lowering of the curbs here. You do not have to be inch perfect. Move down the racetrack to Stowe. What's the dramatic change here? Much sharper second gear corner that leads down the valley and up to Vale. We'll also see the addition of another new gravel trap. Follow through club, a blast up to Abbey, and a dramatic change at the famous Abbey King. No longer a flat-out blast in 6th gear, now a heavy braking second gear left-hander. Move to Priory. Much shorter run here and a big, big gravel trap. And the last major modification, the pit lane. Change, different entrance. Some controversy, though, about the exit.
It's a shorter and tighter Silverstone. We have a cool, breezy day, great conditions for racing. Just a moment, the green flag. Back at Silverstone, Damon Hill with so much on his mind, the pole sitter for the 4th time in his career. But all of England rides on the shoulders of this 33-year-old, trying to fulfill so many legacies, including his late father, Graham Hill, Nigel Mansell, and so on. Now let's take a look at the lineup with the help of our Yamaha starting grid. As mentioned, Damon Hill on pole for the 2nd time in a week, trying to do what Father Graham never could, win the British Grand Prix. His pole time 5 seconds slower than the record due to the changes on the circuit. Next to him, Michael Schumacher in the Benetton Ford, just 3/1,000ths of a second off of pole in one of the closest qualifying sessions ever in Formula One. On row 2, Gerhard Berger of Austria in the Ferrari, just 2/100ths of a second off of pole. Next to him, Frenchman Jean Alesi in the second car, Ferrari using their older engines but looking very good at Silverstone. Row 3 will be Mika Hakkinen of Finland, the McLaren team with clutch problems all weekend. Next to Hakkinen will be Brazilian Rubens Barrichello in the Jordan Hart, 6th on the grid for the 3rd straight race. On row 4, the surprise quickest man in the warm-up, David Coulthard, back in the Williams Renault. Next to him, surprising Japanese Ukio Katayama, his best qualifying position ever in the 8-hole. On row 5 will be Englishman Martin Brundle in the second McLaren. Next to him in the Benetton Ford, Dutchman Jos Verstappen, who will start the backup car. On row 6 will be Mark Blundell of Great Britain in the second Tyrrell. Next to him, Eddie Irvine of Ireland in the second Jordan Hart. The Jordan cars looking very good this weekend as well. Their factory is right here on the Silverstone property. On row 7 will be Heinz-Harald Frentzen of Germany in the Sauber Mercedes, next to the Minardi of Italian Pierluigi Martini. On row 8, Olivier Panis of France in the Ligier, next to the footwork of Gianni Morbidelli of Italy. Row 9 will be Michele Alboreto in the second Minardi, next to the Sauber of Andrea De Cesaris. On row 10, Alessandro Zanardi of Italy was to have the Lotus, but he will start from the pit lane due to a throttle problem. Next to him, Christian Fittipaldi of Brazil in the footwork. Row 11, Johnny Herbert of Great Britain in the Lotus, next to the Larousse of Eric Comas of France. Row 12 will be Eric Bernard of France in the second Ligier, next to the Larousse of Olivier Beretta. And on the final row, the 13th, David Brabham of Australia in the Simtech, next to his teammate Jean-Marc Gounon of France. Once again, Bertrand Gachot and Paul Belmondo did not qualify for the Pacific team. A tough break in this, their home Grand Prix for the Pacific squad. Eric Daly, a look at the points. Michael Schumacher well out front. Damon Hill with lots of ground to make up. How do you see the championship at this point?
Well, obviously, everybody talks about Schumacher, but the spotlight is definitely beginning to move to Damon Hill, particularly with his blasting of the press this week in Britain. He is sick and tired, as you mentioned in the tease, of being number 2. And there is a poise about Damon Hill after last week in France when he beat Mansell in qualifying, and he beat him again in the race, and he ran very well with Schumacher. There is a new poise or confidence about Damon Hill that you can just see and feel. So I think Damon Hill has reached a new mature level, which I think will affect his performance.
That anger in part sparked by rumors in the press that Damon Hill might be fired from the Williams team. A look at past winners of this race. Well, basically you only need 2 names. 8 of the last 9 British Grand Prix races split between Alain Prost and Nigel Mansell. Ayrton Senna in there 1 year. Interesting to note that Alain Prost, now in retirement, has won this race in 3 different car and engine combinations. The McLaren Tag, the Ferrari, and the Williams Renault. The cars beginning their first lap of this new circuit. Here's a look at our race conditions at post time. Nice and cool, clear skies, low humidity, almost no chance of rain, but it is quite breezy. The wind 10 to 20 miles an hour, blowing at the drivers' backs as they make their way across the start-finish line.
There's the new gravel trap. The curbs are lower. You can't see it from this shot, but this is the lowered curbing all the way through Beckett's. And now the blast downhill to one of the biggest changes here at Silverstone, down at Stowe. 190 miles an hour almost in qualifying here. Here's Stowe. Heavy braking, second gear right-hander. And there's the old racetrack. It's now a gravel trap that went out, looped, and came back in again, down the hill, and up to Vale.
To a man, the drivers say these are the kinds of changes we want to let our cars do what they can. Now you're in club corner, hard left and right-hander, climbing a hill right through here, and once again, more gravel traps. All of these changes to the racetrack accomplished in a mere 19 days, working around the clock. An army of people, and looks like one of the Williams Renaults going slowly there. That's Hill as Schumacher shoots by. They'll have to get that straightened out. Now you're in the new Abbey section, very tight left and right-hander. This is where Pedro Lamy had his big accident in the Lotus, which helped spark some of the changes. Now into the stadium section, Priory foreshortened right here. They used to go straight on, and as you can see, acres of new gravel traps, enough new gravel to cover a soccer pitch 4 times.
Look at Damon Hill. Look what's going on here. He has allowed Schumacher to go way ahead of him. Then he blasted. Well, I can only think that he wanted a bit of free racetrack to give the car a blast. I thought for a minute he was going to allow Schumacher to go ahead and sit on the grid and wait.
There's been a lot of talk about the new clutch in the Benetton as you ride with Michael Schumacher. He said we have a new clutch system that takes some getting used to. The report is it is a programmable clutch, and officials are taking a very, very close look at it. Michael's starts have been absolutely lightning quick. There's Her Highness Princess Di with one of the young princes, one of many, many celebrity guests here at Britain. Surely the most spectacular single Grand Prix of the season, with the possible exception of the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, and we'll have more to say about that as the race goes on.
Now you can see one of the unusual things about this start here at Silverstone. It is on a corner. There are two sets of lights. From halfway down the grid, there is a second set of lights, and David Coulthard is in trouble already. They may have to throw a yellow.
Nope. We've got a green flag at the back. Now it's up to the starter. Will he give them the lights? David Coulthard, back in the number 7 spot, could be in jeopardy. And recall what happened at the Grand Prix of San Marino when J.J. Leto was clobbered by an onrushing car, Pedro Lamy. Our feed from British television goes to black. Now there you see Coulthard in the number 2 Williams Renault.
I don't see his arms. It is a restart. Yes, it is. They had no option. There have been such catastrophes in Formula One this year. If they allowed it to start with David Coulthard sitting there and there was yet another accident, somebody would have had an awful lot of explanations to give.
Now you ask, why don't they just run out there and restart Coulthard? You're not allowed to do that, and they obviously don't want mechanics running around on a grid with live engines. So the field has been told to cut engines. There will be a 5-minute hold, then we will restart.
That's Charlie Whiting, the FIA delegate, technical delegate, in consultation with David Coulthard. One of the Marlboro people is down there.
Wouldn't be surprised if that's McLaren team director Ron Dennis coming over to have a look. There is very little that he misses on a Formula One grid. Engineer David Brown now consulting with Charlie Whiting. But as you can see, the teams are streaming back onto the grid, so we'll have a short break. And all of this excitement will be done all over again. So stay with us. We'll be back live to Silverstone. At Silverstone, England, and there is young Scotsman David Coulthard, whose engine stalled or perhaps some other problem plagued him on the starting grid. So the start of this British Grand Prix was called off momentarily. Now Coulthard will be required to go to the back of the starting grid, and the race distance will be reduced by 1 lap. It was formerly 59 laps. It was extended to 61 due to the fact that the track was shortened, as you look at Damon Hill, Coulthard's teammate. But now it will be run over 60 laps, and the first lap has been completed at warm-up pace.
And David Coulthard, who was not happy with his performance in qualifying, was spectacular, as mentioned earlier in the warm-up session this morning. 0.3 of a second faster than the whole field. And he was absolutely delighted with that. And now, something mechanical causes him to have to start all the way down the back of the grid. Can you imagine? All the practice and all the qualifying has now been thrown out the window because grid position is no longer. Look at the big hole in the back of the airbox that Williams still have. That was the original design they came up with to comply with the new airbox rules, and that's the one they have stuck with.
You may be wondering just whether anyone has ever come from the back of a Formula One grid to win a race. Not so. The most cars passed during a race, John Watson, who is watching this race for Eurosport television and calling the telecast, won a race from the 22nd position on the starting grid, and that is the furthest back anyone has ever come from. Let's take a look at British winners at this most British of Grand Prix races. The late, great Jim Clark, 5 victories. Nigel Mansell with 4, plus 1 victory in the Grand Prix of Europe, held at the Brands Hatch circuit here in England, his very first Formula One win. 2 for Sterling Moss, who never won the World Championship, but is still beloved by English racing fans. Jackie Stewart with 2 among his 3 World Championships. Peter Collins, James Hunt, and John Watson, each with 1 victory. And of course, every driver wants to win his home Grand Prix. Another car still stopped, or that may be Coulthard, waiting for the field to go by. Michael Schumacher leads them away again through Copse. He'll have to drop back behind pole sitter Damon Hill. There you see Coulthard being held. And the team looking on anxiously. Now he gets going, but only just.
Now watch the way they line up. Here again, good shots of Beckett's. Last year the curves were higher, which means when you approach at 165 miles an hour, you had to be absolutely inch perfect because you couldn't touch one of those curves. It was potentially a very dangerous situation. That's why it was changed. Again, look at the gravel trap on the outside. That was also where Damon Hill up at Beckett's lost both front suspensions on Friday morning. On his opening lap, both front suspensions came loose due to an incredibly unbelievable assembly problem with the Williams. Another high shot of Abbey. Oh, one of the Jordan cars in all sorts of trouble, already just pulled off.
Looks like an overheating problem, perhaps. Steam pouring from the car. Eddie Irvine, who's had a terrible weekend, showing bits of blinding speed. He was 5th fastest in the morning warm-up, and now there's Alessandro Zanardi. I keep wanting to call him Pedro Lamy, who had a big accident here at Silverstone, has been laid up ever since. That is Zanardi. And there, once again, Eddie Irvine, who showed, as I mentioned, blazing speed, was 5th fastest in the Friday morning session, but could not make the car work the way he wanted in qualifying.
But he has been fast. I mean, both Jordan cars have been very impressive here all weekend. So sad for Irvine. Every motorsports fan in Ireland has taken the ferry and come across here. Look at the old racetrack. Look straight up that camera shot. That was the old blast down to Woodcote. And how many times do motorsports fans remember the likes of Ronnie Peterson coming through Woodcote sideways in the John Player Lotus oversteering? And then the dreaded chicane came, and then all the changes came. Now look at the grid here. Damon Hill is on the outside, which means if Schumacher gets even a half-decent start, he can go up the inside of Damon Hill. If Damon Hill gets a good start, he get the apex and blast through that first turn at Copse.
Smoke from further back up the grid. That looks like could be Martin Brundle back there, since Coulthard is not on the grid. Smoke from the second McLaren back there, Martin Brundle. Watch the Ferraris. Alesi and Berger lightning fast at the start. Good start at the front row, and a huge explosion from Brundle's car on the starting grid. Martin Brundle pulls off immediately, and another British driver out of this race.
But a brilliant, brilliant start by Damon Hill. Absolutely pulled it over Michael Schumacher while we watch the fireworks from the hand grenade of the Peugeot again.
Now the Beckett's corners that gradually allow the drivers to go quicker and quicker and then launch onto Hanger Straight.
Oh, look at the battle behind. Mika Hakkinen tries to block. I think it's Mark Blundell.
Over the curves, through the Vale. Notice the new section of track there, allowing the drivers a wide entry into this corner. Club. Barrichello in the Jordan has now split the Ferraris. Here's another look at the start. Notice the car, 4 cars back on the right side of your screen. The front row will get a great start, but watch what happens to the car at the back. Boom! As Martin Brundle goes up in a ball of flames.
And Michael Schumacher obviously got just a touch too much wheel spin as the McLaren pulls off onto the grass. Damon Hill has 3 car lengths. You can listen to the crowd cheer for Damon Hill as he goes across leading the British Grand Prix. Look at the oil flag. Look at the oil flag. That's from that blown up McLaren. Jos Verstappen, you see him there nice and clear. Katayama drops back. He didn't get a good start.
Barrichello got a beauty though, and he now splits Berger and Alesi in the Ferraris. There's a look at your running order from the Tag Heuer timers. Great start for Rubens Barrichello and for Jos Verstappen, the young Dutchman who was the test and development driver for the Benetton team. but sits in now for Finn J.J. Leto. Another look from BBC. Watch Barrichello on that third row. Now that we've seen Brundle, watch the car just behind the red Ferrari. Goes inside, then outside.
Can you imagine what Mark Blundell must have thought? He got the turtle totally sideways when that hand grenade went off, because I'm sure the shrapnel must have been flying around. So Blundell comes through this terrible smoke screen. Here it is here. Well, I must say, Peugeot have been well in the public eye as these hand grenades have gone off on a regular basis, just a trail of smoke. And so now Eddie Irvine from Ireland and Martin Brundle, local hometown boy, never even make it around the first lap.
As I mentioned, every driver wants to win his home Grand Prix, but for British drivers in the home of Formula One racing, most of the teams based here in Britain, it is absolutely catastrophic to be out at the very beginning of the race.
Now Damon Hill needs to just settle down a little bit. On the speed traps, there are 3 different speed traps around the racetrack here. On the faster sections, Damon Hill was quicker. On the slower sections, the Schumacher Benetton was a little bit quicker, suggesting that it handles a little bit better. But Damon Hill, he was only 0.003 of a second quicker in qualifying, in one of the best qualifying battles we have seen for a long time. But he thought if he could get ahead of Schumacher and play the pit stop strategy properly, he thinks he can beat him.
See how quickly they have to downshift for these new Priory corners. Damon Hill has set fast lap. You ride with Michael Schumacher. Through the stadium section, through Woodcote, across the start-finish line. Hill, Schumacher, Berger, Barrichello, Alesi, and Verstappen. Stay with us. Back at the British Grand Prix, Bob Varsha, Derek Daly, glad to have you with us. Damon Hill flying the Union Jack for a huge crowd on hand, well over 100,000 people. There you see the RAF helicopters overhead, a tremendous show at Silverstone. There's always something going on the racetrack, including displays of vintage racing cars and many, many supporting events, including the exciting British Touring Car Series, their version of our stock cars. You ride with Michael Schumacher. That's race leader Damon Hill up ahead.
Second gear. Third, fourth, fifth, and back to second. Very slow now. Club used to be one of the most spectacular off-camber right-handers in all of racing, and it has gone through so many changes over the years. But this here was also a dramatic change, and here's somebody with dramatics of his own. David Coulthard, all the way up to 14th place, having started at the back of the grid. He may be about to make a name for himself if his car continues to handle as well as it did in the morning's warm-up, where he was the fastest.
Of course, we did lose 2 cars right at the start of this race, actually the second attempted start of this race, after Coulthard's car developed problems on the starting grid. Through Woodcote, race leader Damon Hill giving it all it's worth. We lost Eddie Irvine, who stopped on the second warm-up lap, and then we lost Martin Brundle's McLaren at the start line in a ball of flames. Fully 1/3 of this racetrack, now 3.14 miles long, was repaved for this race. Fast lap has gone to Damon Hill once again, but that's because Michael Schumacher took it away from him on lap 3.
Zanardi is over. Another disaster for Lotus. Zanardi, who had to start from the pit lane because of fuel problems, has another problem and pulls the second Lotus, who in fact was the lead Lotus because he was quicker than Johnny Herbert all this weekend, and now his day ends up on the grass also.
Well, that's not the only problem for the Lotus team. Struggling to try to regain the glory days of Colin Chapman and Ronnie Peterson and world champion Mario Andretti. Last week, a court ruled that Team Lotus, already somewhat strapped for funds, owes Cosworth Engineering $3.1 million for engines used last year and the season before. Damon Hill with brakes smoking as he launches around this ultra-high-speed racetrack. It has slowed up over the years from back in 1985 when K.K. Rosberg, the 82 world champion, launched around here in the turbocharged Williams Honda at an average lap speed of 160 miles an hour, the fastest anyone had ever gone for a total lap in Formula One. 1991, they added the chicanes that Derek mentioned. Now this year, they've changed it again. There you see the gaps behind the leader, Hill.
Through the kinks that you just saw them coming through at Beckett's, they approach at 160 miles an hour and do not use the brakes.
He used them right there, you can bet.
Well, Schumacher does not seem to be making any headway on trying to catch Damon Hill. I mean, the gap is fairly stable here. If anything, Damon Hill can open it up just a little bit on the faster sections. Down through Priory, this is Abbey. Let's watch them down through Priory. And you'll see under braking and turn-in, the Benetton is a tiny bit better. Changing direction with the Benetton is one of its strongest points. That's Bridge Corner. 180 miles an hour you approach. And David Coulthard on Friday morning approached there backwards. He was very graphic in his description of what he thought was going to happen. He said, I know I'm going to have a very, very big crash. This probably will hurt. And he managed to miss everything and kept that Williams all in one piece.
Listen to the sound of the Renault V10 as it goes by compared to the Ford V8. And you can tell the RPM difference. Very distinctive, higher pitch to the Renault. And there's only about 500 RPM difference between the two of them for the standard operating range. Most Formula One engines operate within about a 2,500 RPM power band, and all of them up around 14,000. There goes Mika Hakkinen in the McLaren Peugeot, who no doubt knows what happened to his teammate Martin Brundle. Gerhard Berger, the Ferraris have really come on strong here in their new aerodynamic dress. And they're still not using their most powerful engine, they say. Oh, they do have their new titanium gearbox.
And Jean Todt again is on record this weekend saying, yes, in a couple of races we will be in a position to challenge for the pole. In fact, Berger could have been on the pole here, except, believe it or not, on his last set of qualifying tires, he clipped the guardrail exiting the pit lane, punctured it, and never had a fair run. But look at Barrichello in the Jordan. They have been superb all weekend here with the Brian Hart engined car, the V10, and Alesi cannot catch Rubens Barrichello.
Tremendous mix of engines up front as you watch Jean Alesi. Gerhard Berger is already signed up for 1995 with the Ferrari team, but Jean Alesi is very, very mum about his plans for next year. He says, I love Ferrari, but I'm still waiting for my first victory, to get the equipment that I can use to win my first Grand Prix, and I have to look out for myself. So there's some question about where Jean Alesi will be next year. It might be Ferrari, it might be Benetton. He's been to the Williams camp.
Good to see Jos Verstappen still on the road. I say that tongue-in-cheek. He's been off the road so many times this weekend here. He was off again this morning in the warm-up. He flew off the road after 2 laps in the qualifying session on Friday. He went off the road here during the test session 2 weeks ago. I mean, Verstappen has an immense amount of talent, but he's not fast. Just think about that. He has all the talent, but he doesn't have the finesse or the polish or the experience to make him a front-running Grand Prix driver. I have to tell you that Schumacher 2 years ago flew off the road many times, and he matured into a true superstar. Look at David Coulthard, now up into 12th place, and Blundell in the Tyrrell with the much improved Yamaha V10 is the next car on his shopping list.
So many of the teams British base, some 10 of the 14 teams, and for them this is their home track. They test here. pounding out mile after mile. Last year, McLaren alone tested 72 days, 60 of them right here at Silverstone. Great battle there for Verstappen and Hakkinen. Recall that huge accident in Brazil that Verstappen had earlier this year when he tangled with Eddie Irvine and Eric Bernard and Martin Brundle. He hasn't had many races, but he's doing well right now. There you see Ukio Katayama, who continues to impress with the Tyrrell team. It is Hill, Schumacher, Berger, Barrichello, Alesi, Verstappen, Hakkinen, Katayama, Freundsen, and Penny. Your top 10. Stay with us. Not far from the track at Silverstone lies one of the world's great centers of learning, Oxford University, whose list of illustrious alumni extends over the horizon. Includes U.S. President Bill Clinton and a former pit reporter here at ESPN, James Allen. Just one of the many splendors of the Midlands of England, including Stratford-upon-Avon, where Shakespeare was born. Right now, you're looking at the battle for 8th place, and it's a great one. This is David Coulthard in the middle of that sandwich. He's got a Tyrrell ahead of him and a Ligier behind him. He started at the back of this grid after problems at the attempted first start, and now he is rocketing forward.
And Olivier Panis must be in trouble because Blundell pounced, made the pass, and then almost immediately David Coulthard. We are on board now with David Coulthard. That's Blundell in the Tyrrell, right ahead of him. Flamethrower out the exhaust. This is Priory, all second gear. Point his squirt, stab the throttle, get through as best you can, and then blast back out onto the real racetrack.
Excuse me, this is now for 5th place. Blundell is 5th, Coulthard 6th. David Coulthard, the young Scotsman. Absolutely galvanized by that problem on the starting grid. A nose camera.
We saw the nose can on Johnny Herbert's car last weekend in France, and it gave us tremendous pictures. Remember how the front suspension bounced up and down?
Excuse me, I was right. It was for 8th place. I have to trust myself. Now it is 9th place. David Coulthard running 10th, trying to take 9th from Blundell.
Both local heroes here. Blundell and David Coulthard spent most of their racing lives racing right in front of the crowds that are here this weekend today to watch them. Look at the Union Jacks wave, but David Coulthard from Scotland and the other side of the border, Blundell, having a tremendous run in that Yamaha Tyrrell. But I tell you what, Blundell is under pressure because the faster Katayama goes, the worse Blundell looks, and I'm sure he is even surprised and frustrated that he has not been able to match Ukio Katayama's pace virtually at all this season.
For purists, we should point out there is a difference between being British and being English. Right there, Damon Hill, the race leader, lapping slower traffic, is English. But you can be from other parts of the United Kingdom and be British without being English.
I mentioned the suspension failure on Damon Hill's car. The top wishbone, the back mounting of both top wishbones simply popped out. Both front wheels collapsed and folded back into the chassis of the car. Damon Hill never even got one lap, so he immediately went to the spare car, which became his race car all through practice and qualifying, and that's the car that he's in right now. He said it happened so fast, he didn't have time to get scared. But he said, Mark, make no mistake about it, I have total faith in the Williams team and the mechanics, and I know they will give me a safe car. So he said it didn't really bother him from then on.
Sounds like spin doctoring to me. With 12 laps complete of 60 scheduled, it is Hill, Schumacher, Berger, Barrichello, Alesi, and Verstappen. Oh, one of the LaRousse cars is off.
We saw a cloud of smoke. It's Eric Comas. Eric Comas and another cloud of smoke. Another one of the Ford engines has gone awry somehow, somewhere. Gerard LaRousse mentioned this weekend the biggest problem they had was they spent 2 months over the winter time when they lost Lamborghini as an engine supplier, and they searched for another one before they came up with the Ford Cosworth engine. That critical 2 months of wasted test time has really cost them dearly in every race this year as Schumacher gets a little bit closer to Damon Hill. Now, just over 1 second. In fact, I don't think it's a second, because that time would have been measured across the finish line on the last particular lap.
With all due respect to the folks who provide our timing and scoring when they do, it's a pretty useless statistic to put gap between the cars at the start-finish line out there on the backside of the racetrack when it changes so much. It'll be interesting to see what the pit stop strategies for these teams are, because the new pit lane takes a great deal of time to enter, get your service work done, and exit. The teams say up to 50 seconds, which they reckon is much too much time to spend on one pit stop. Some have been toying with the idea of a one-stop race. It remains to be seen whether they'll do it. Damon Hill says, "We lost France on pit strategy a week ago. We don't mean to let that happen again." Behind the battle for first, Hill and Schumacher, it is Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari, then Barrichello, Alesi, and Verstappen. Then Mika Hakkinen, Ukio Katayama, and Mark Blundell. The Tyrrells right now running 8 and 9. Then David Coulthard in the 10 spot. Olivier Panis, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, then Pierluigi Martini in the Minardi, Johnny Herbert, Christian Fittipaldi. We saw Eric Comas go off, so he is now out of it. Michele Alboreto, Eric Bernard, Olivier Beretta, and David Brabham round out the top 20. Jean-Marc Gounon is 21st, and everybody else fading badly.
Believe it or not, it's just been announced over the PA system at Silverstone that Michael Schumacher, now listen to this, will get a 5-second stop and go penalty. We're going to try and find out what that is for, but believe it or not, a 5-second, that means 5 second in the pit lane. It's the time it takes him into the pit lane that loses you all the time.
And the key thing about that is you do not serve that penalty at your pit, so you can't park, get your pit service, sit there for 5 seconds and go. You have to stop at the end or the start of the pit lane, wherever the pit marshals tell you to stop. So you're essentially making 2 stops. Damon Hill is in for service at the Williams pit.
So he's only completed 14 laps, and Damon Hill decides it's time for a pit stop. That means he's got to have a minimum of 2 stops. Nice and clean. Down the pit lane, still 75 miles an hour speed limit here, raised from 50 2 races ago. Now what's the exit here? The crash barrier, the Armco barrier on the left-hand side. That was what Gerhard Berger clipped on the way out yesterday afternoon during his last qualifying attempt, and he never made it around. He broke the tire and wheel and had a spin.
He comes out just ahead of Rubens Barrichello's Jordan, so that tells you something about how far in front Damon Hill was at the time of his stop.
This might be an interesting little battle here in both V10 engine cars here. The Jordan right up behind the Williams. The Jordan has slightly warmer tires at this particular time, so Barrichello now gets to run right behind. Not the man who's leading now, of course, because Schumacher has now moved up, but Damon Hill will now be running in 4th place.
An interesting rumor floated in the pit lane this weekend. Williams may not have the Renault engine in 1995. Now, earlier this year, we were told that they had agreed for 1995, but we understand there may be an announcement coming from Renault next week, and it could be a real shocker in the Formula One pit lane if Renault decides to go with Benetton rather than Williams.
Now here's the explanation for the 5-second stop and go penalty for Michael Schumacher. He overtook Damon Hill on the pace lap. On the warm-up lap prior to the start, he overtook Damon Hill. They had judged that to be wrong. They're going to bring him in for a 5-second penalty. I'll guarantee you, Michael Schumacher had no idea that was a punishable offense. And that really is going to change the face of this race now.
The first time I've ever heard of it. Andrea de Cesaris has dropped out of the race, so the attrition is mounting rapidly. We lost 2 cars on the first lap. Since then, 4 more have dropped out. So of the 26 starters, 20 cars remain in the running. Here comes Mark Blundell in the Tyrrell.
As I say, it's not the time that you're stopped getting service. It's that difficulty getting into a very slow, tight, right, left, right pit lane that takes all the time. Now, obviously, Schumacher is going to take his 5-second penalty at the same time as he takes his first stop. Here he is. He's on his way in, so let's have a look to see what he does. Where does he take it? Well, he goes straight to his pit. This looks normal so far. Looks pretty normal to me. In fact, it looks spectacular. "75 miles an hour looks slow. I don't see anything wrong there.
No 5-second stop either. So, curiouser and curiouser, as the famous English author once wrote. David Coulthard expected in the Williams pit very shortly. A good first round of stops for the Williams boys.
I'm not sure, but did Schumacher beat Damon Hill out of the pit lane? I think he did.
We'll check the timing and scoring after a quick timeout here. Live coverage of the British Grand Prix, and Schumacher is in fact out ahead of Damon Hill. We'll sort it out for you when we return to Silverstone. Back live at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, and you're watching a little bit of history in 1994. The red number 28 Ferrari of Gerhard Berger is now the race leader. The first race lead for Ferrari this year. Recall the Grand Prix of San Marino, where Berger was ahead on the racetrack, ahead of Schumacher, whom he leads right now, but he was behind in the accumulated standings after the accident that took the life of Ayrton Senna. The race was run in two portions, and Gerhard Berger was actually ahead of Schumacher on the track, but behind in time. So right now, the lead definitely belongs to Gerhard Berger. And if Italy's 2-1 victory in World Cup soccer drove the folks crazy back home, you can bet that Ferrari out front at the British Grand Prix is even more so.
But he is under serious threat. And it's interesting to watch it. When you begin to stretch your legs, the Ferrari draws away from the Benetton. As soon as you get into the braking zones, when you got to turn left or right, the Benetton closes right up as he is here. Now this is where he doesn't have the biggest advantage here. Oh, did you see how wide Schumacher went there? All the way around the outside. A totally different line to Gerhard Berger. Heavy brakes again, second gear. Turn it left. The Ferrari does not like changing direction. Schumacher's quicker through here. But this is where Schumacher is all over the Ferrari. Look at this, under braking. Second gear corners, closes right up behind him. All second gear. Point is squirt. That's Damon Hill in third, right behind him. So Schumacher had the much better run in the pit stops. Now, it was announced over the PA that he was going to get a 5-second stop-and-go penalty. We do not have anything official as an update as to why we haven't seen that happen yet.
Let's take another look at the infraction of which Michael Schumacher stands accused. Now, this is actually the start of the race. The start of the second pace lap, and as you see, Michael Schumacher launched himself ahead of Damon Hill. Now, I've not heard of this before, frankly.
I've never heard of that type of penalty, because how can you possibly police something like that? Tell me what would have happened if Damon Hill missed a gear. Schumacher has to jump on the brakes and cause a big concertina effect behind him.
And what about cars further back in the pack? I mean, if I pass you for 11th,
I've never heard of anything like that.
Of course, we wouldn't have qualified 11th and 12th, but there you have it.
There's Schumacher's different line again. He lets the car run free all the way around the outside while Berger keeps a much tighter line. Now, Berger's tires have done 18 laps more than the Benetton and than the Williams. I can only surmise that they can't hang on forever. Maybe Berger is planning, ooh, look at Schumacher. Little look down the inside. He is considerably faster at the moment. He is faster at the moment. But the black flag has just come out for Michael Schumacher. So whatever argument Briatore put up to try and get this stop and go eliminated, it hasn't worked. there is a black flag being shown to Michael Schumacher.
And tragically, it ruins one of the best dices for the lead we've seen in a long time in Formula One. 3 cars, Gerhard Berger's Ferrari, Michael Schumacher's Benetton, and Damon Hill's Williams Renault, battling for the lead here at Silverstone.
And this is Formula One at its very best here. Schumacher, the V8 car in the sandwich between a V10 and a V12. There it is. It's now official. Lap 22, black flag for Michael Schumacher. Now this will put the cat among the pigeons here, because if he can stop and get back out again and get himself into the mix here, we could be in for a spectacular second half of this race.
Oh, this is painful. The fact that a black flag for passing on a warm-up lap will take the heart out of one of the best battles we've seen in a long time. What a shame.
And Briatore and the rest of the Benetton management are arguing at the moment in the pit lane with the Silverstone officials to find out, can they get something done about this black flag. But we have a tussle of all, a Formula One tussles going on here. Watch Schumacher down the inside of the Ferrari. Will he try it?
Covered switch to the roost, but there goes Michael Schumacher. Now he's going to have the pit entrance coming up shortly. I wonder if he even saw the black flag in that battle as they flashed across the start-finish line. It's a question of whether the team might have told him over the radio, I suppose. Now Berger fits the Ferrari, and Schumacher does not head for the pit end.
Well, Damon Hill is about to have this race handed to him on a platter. He's going to have a big lead. He's already made his pit stop. He loses the Ferrari to a pit stop. Schumacher's about to take a 5-second penalty plus a long stop. And Damon Hill is going to have a clear racetrack ahead of him and behind him.
If Michael Schumacher's not careful, he's going to have far more. Good stop for the Ferrari crew. Gerhard Berger launches back out. This was Berger's first stop. Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher's Benetton team is arguing that the penalty, if there should be one, should be 5 seconds added to his time. There's Flavio Briatore, the team manager.
We're talking the World Championship here, boys. We're talking about Formula One, the biggest racing series in the world. And we're talking about a penalty that could be argued very logically as to whether it's justified or proper.
No competitive advantage gained at all by passing someone on the warm-up lap, for Pete's sake. And of course, a 5-second stop is nothing like a 5-second stop. It's more like a 40-second stop by the time you slow down and speed up. Now here's a look from overhead. Damon Hill made a move on Michael Schumacher. Schumacher in turn made his move on Gerhard Berger.
Oh, and it was a mistake by Berger that opened the door for Schumacher. Berger turned in, completely missed the apex point, understeered wide, and that told Berger, my tires are now shot, I have no more grip, and he ran straight to the pit lane. Well, now, if Schumacher thinks he needs to make up 5 seconds on Damon Hill, he's about to start to dig deep and try, because he's stretching his lead now over Hill, particularly through these sweeps and turns where you turn left and right and make these cars change direction. Here's the argument.
Roland Breinserata, Formula One safety officer, talking with members of the Benetton team. That's Tom Walkinshaw.
Tom Walkinshaw, the sporting director or technical director of Benetton. Basically, he calls most of the shots. Briatore is the team manager. He's the front man. And Walkinshaw would dearly love to win his home Grand Prix. Schumacher's in traffic. The argument goes on. I don't see any logic here. Let's go inside, Tom says. Let's go inside and finish this off in a less public situation.
Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher continues pounding around the racetrack. You have to be wondering what's going through his mind right now.
But remember, he would have seen the black flag, so he knows there's something going on. He doesn't know what yet, but he's being told by his team, do not come in yet. This might bring another penalty.
Exactly. He really is risking something here. We do not have access to the officials, but I must say the timing of this penalty is absolutely atrocious on the face of it. We'll be right back. Flashing through the haze at Silverstone in the English Midlands, Damon Hill runs in second place at the British Grand Prix. Bob Varsha and Derek Daly with you on this Sunday morning. It is Sunday afternoon in England where this race is going on. There is Flavio Briatore. the director of the Benetton team, who has been engaged in furious discussions with the FIA officials, the stewards who are running this race. They have declared that man, Michael Schumacher, the race leader, there's Tom Walkinshaw coming over, no doubt, to brief Briatore on his discussions with the officials.
It sure doesn't look to me as if the argument has been fruitful, because the expression on Briatore's face there, you can almost read what he says, although it may be in Italian. I don't think they've managed to convince these organizers not to bring this penalty on Michael Schumacher. Damon Hill, also remember, will know that Schumacher is being penalized.
The penalty, we are told, is for Schumacher driving ahead of pole sitter Damon Hill on the warm-up lap, the formation lap, the reconnaissance lap, before the cars ever took their positions to start this race. Now, no doubt a lengthy official explanation will be forthcoming. We don't have access to it right now, but it will really cut the heart out of a great battle for the lead here in Britain. And the longer the Benetton team now waits for the inevitable, the longer they wait to bring Schumacher in for that stop, the less time they will leave their man to get back on the racetrack and try to recover from the penalty.
So now officially Michael Schumacher has about a 2-second lead or thereabouts over Damon Hill. Just watch what happens when you get a 5-second stop-and-go penalty. It's the in-time and the out-time in the pit lane that costs you much, much more than your 5 seconds. I would no, I'm not going to estimate. No point going out on a limb. We'll just watch it.
Here comes the official classification after 26 laps of 60 scheduled. Schumacher, Hill, Alesi, Mika Hakkinen up to 4th, Gerhard Berger 5th, Rubens Barrichello 6th. Alesi in the 3rd spot has not yet pitted. You ride with him right now. Then Heinz-Harald Freundsen in the Sauber. He's been having a tough weekend, but he's going well now. David Coulthard from the back of the grid up to 8th spot now. Fukio Katayama 9th. Jos Verstappen is 10th. Now here comes Michael Schumacher.
Absolutely furious he will be. Now this is the part where you lose most of your time, all the way to the end of the pit lane. That's real stop for his 5 seconds. Whoa, he will be absolutely livid. There's a digital countdown on his right-hand side. Here we go. Whoa.
There goes Mika Hakkinen, the 4th place car past him.
There will be discussions about this stop-and-go penalty for a long time, because the record that Nigel Mansell set now gets even more difficult for Schumacher to attain. But to the joy of everybody here and every waving Union Jack, Damon Hill now has a commanding lead, but they both have to make a pit stop apiece at least.
Damon Hill having just lapped Johnny Herbert behind him. That's the lapped Lotus. The car behind that, I believe, is a Minardi, and it has also been lapped. So Damon Hill on his own piece of racetrack right now. Spare a thought for Damon Hill. After all the flack he has taken, all the rumors that he will not keep his job with the Williams team, despite an exemplary effort behind the wheel, he just doesn't seem to have whatever it is that the English public seems to want. The charisma, perhaps, or the style of driving that Nigel Mansell made so famous. A Dale Earnhardt style, indomitable, take the car and wring its neck. Now, should he go on to win this race, everybody's going to say, well, yeah, Schumacher had a penalty.
That is true, and it's a viable argument, but there is something about Damon Hill, since he outqualified Mansell in France and he withstood the pressure, that honestly is beginning to give him that confident look, feel, walk, poise, as Alesi finally comes in, drops out of the 3rd place. But Damon Hill is beginning to elevate himself to a leader. That is what Renault wants. Listen to that V12 scream as Alesi keeps it almost on the rev limiter. So Alesi comes out of 3rd place, and Mika Hakkinen is also in the pit lane. So 3rd and 4th pit, that moves Berger and Barrichello back up to 3rd and 4th.
Now these stops come just short of halfway in the race, which is a pretty interesting strategy. Will they try to make it a one-stop race? If so, they have left more of the race ahead of them than behind them.
Well, certainly Hakkinen could go for a one-stop now, but Hill, who was one of our very first people to stop in the pit lane, for sure he is already programmed to make another pit stop, as well as we believe Schumacher.
Hill, Schumacher, Alesi, Hakkinen, Berger, and Barrichello, but that order may be juggled now on the basis of the pit stops. We'll sort it out when we return. We are back at Silverstone in England. You watch Gerhard Berger in the third-placed Ferrari. Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher, who runs in second place following that stop-and-go, well, a 5-second black flag for passing on the warm-up lap of all things, has taken 2 seconds off of Damon Hill's lead in his very first lap back on the racetrack. Now, traffic may have played a role, but there is a great race in store here in Britain. There is also All-Star Baseball coming your way here on ESPN, and we'll have it covered. At 7:30 tomorrow night, from All-Star Monday, it'll be the Gala from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Then at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, the Home Run Derby, featuring all of your favorite stars, Ken Griffey and Frank Thomas and more. Then at 10 p.m., Heroes of Baseball, just a part of ESPN's wall-to-wall coverage of the All-Star Game from Three Rivers Stadium at Pittsburgh. Tomorrow, Monday, here on ESPN. Now there's Michael Schumacher, who no doubt is driving nearly blinded with anger at what officials have done to him here.
And when he came out after that pit stop, remember, he was 2 seconds in the lead. He was 22 seconds behind Damon Hill. So 5 seconds stationary and 15 seconds going down the pit lane and back out again is what Michael Schumacher lost. But now he has the ideal platform of rage and car control to demonstrate once again his true brilliance. He is in pursuit of Damon Hill, and he will close that gap. But is he too far behind? Look at the back of the car just kick out as he jumps on that 800 horsepower, wrestling with the Benetton. He is going to use every single piece of performance this car has as we watch Christian Fittipaldi in the second Arrows car come back out. Looks so slow, that 75 miles an hour down the pit lane. Christian Fittipaldi will be a guest of Uncle Emerson next weekend at the Toronto IndyCar race.
There you see the gap from Schumacher back to the third-placed Ferrari of Gerhard Berger, each man running pretty much alone on the racetrack. Rubens Barrichello follows Berger by just 3.4 seconds. Then a 7-second gap from Barrichello back to Jean Alesi. So Alesi and Hakkinen, we saw, because of those pit stops, moved from third and fourth back to fourth and fifth. Now the race is really on, though. Schumacher looking right back against his face. Look at those hands. This is all the low-speed stuff. Look back in the airbox. See the hole in the airbox to relieve that pressure, which was the ram air effect down into the engines, which cost these teams about 4 horsepower. That's Gugnon in the Simtek. Now, while this is going on, Gerhard Berger in the third-placed Ferrari is slowing on the racetrack. So problems in the Ferrari camp. The order is Hill, Schumacher, Berger, but Berger may not be there for long. Rubens Barrichello fourth, then Alesi and Hakkinen fifth and sixth. David Coulthard runs behind him. There's Gerhard Berger, the Austrian, with his hand in the air. His day appears to be over.
Such a shame for Gerhard Berger, but this Ferrari is getting stronger. Look at the wisps of oil. Is it oil coming out of the back? He has no choice. He's trying to stay off the racing line. Look, he accelerates through the apex to try and get out of people's way, to try and get that Ferrari off the racetrack. But he knows there's something terminal wrong with the Ferrari. Look at the smoke and oil coming out. Oh, that is oil. He needs to get off the racetrack. Now he's in the pit lane. But the Ferrari gets better. All titanium gearbox. The 75-degree engine was here in practice and qualifying. Not for the race. It will become the race engine very shortly. Perhaps Hockenheim, the long blast out through the forest, will give Ferrari the best chance of grabbing a long overdue victory.
As we've mentioned time and again, as you watch Michael Schumacher, Ferrari, the only team in Formula One to have raced every race since the beginning of the series, and the only team that makes its entire car from nose to tail, including the engine and the gearbox. Ferrari working on their longest non-winning streak ever, approaching 60 races before too long. And there's David Coulthard, who was elevated to the 6th and final points-paying position by Gerhard Berger's dropping out of the race. He has now moved into the 5 spot. There you see Mika Hakkinen behind him.
And David Coulthard, another driver who took the green flag with a tremendous amount of frustration and rage, having had to move to the back of the grid. Again, nothing spurs a driver on more than some rage sometimes, as long as you keep it in control. But David Coulthard having a superb afternoon in front of so many friends and family here at Silverstone.
That's the point, isn't it? Damon Hill may be under pressure. Consider David Coulthard in only his 3rd Grand Prix, driving in one of the best cars in the field in front of the home fans and having to do it from the back. Here's another look at the rollout. Remember, I'll disregard all the blue tire smoke. This was in preparation for the slow lap that leads to the grid and the official race start. Michael Schumacher in the green Benetton drives out ahead of pole sitter Damon Hill, and for that, officials said he had to take a 5-second penalty that has dropped him into 2nd place, and he runs 19 seconds now. Make that 18 seconds behind new race leader Damon Hill. So you can imagine that some of the support of this crowd may have shifted just a bit from homeboy Damon Hill to the underdog Michael Schumacher. Stay with us. Live at Silverstone in the English Midlands at the British Grand Prix, there is David Coulthard, who started dead last in this field after suffering problems on the aborted first attempted start of this race. He has now carried himself all the way up to 5th spot and hopes to move up. Just ahead of him there, the red Ferrari of Jean Alesi in 4th.
And David Coulthard is absolutely flying. He was 4 seconds behind Alesi just 2 laps earlier. He's catching him an average almost a second a lap. What a race he's having. What an enjoyable afternoon he must be having. Remember, he came from almost obscurity. He was a test driver just filling in for Frank, doing miles and miles of development on gearboxes and stuff like that, and suddenly he was called up to duty. And now he begins to make his name. David Coulthard, again, very good under pressure. Doesn't make many mistakes under racing conditions.
Word from the pits, Derek, is that Gerhard Berger's Ferrari lost the engine. Engine problems for Berger, so he is out of the race. Meanwhile, there is Damon Hill, the race leader, but his gap is shrinking by about a half second a lap. You reckon that to be enough, Derek?
Well, half a second a lap. He's 18 seconds to the good. That means you need 36 laps to catch him. He doesn't have that much. But traffic may play a role here. The most common, it's 17 seconds now. Traffic was the most commonly used word with drivers here all weekend. During practice and qualifying, everybody complained about catching traffic on their fast laps. Because they've slowed this racetrack down a lot more, you cannot get out of the way. You have to brake, you have to turn into apex, and that is causing a lot of trouble. So Damon Hill needs a good run through traffic. So hopefully everybody he comes up upon, they will realize he is Mr. Union Jack and be a nice boy and move over and let Damon Hill possibly be the first Hill. 17 times his old man Graham Hill tried to win this race and never did. And unbelievably, there isn't a driver in this race that has ever won the British Grand Prix. So Damon Hill may be about to set another small piece of history. This is David Coulthard behind Alesi. Here we go. Not enough room. Oh, this is close though. But David Coulthard having a great run against Alesi.
Once again, you're the hood ornament on David Coulthard's Williams Renault. Just can't seem to get enough of a run on him.
Took a wide line entering club here. He's tighter coming out, wide in, tight coming out. He's putting pressure on Alesi. Now under braking for Abbey. Here we go. Under braking, not enough. David Coulthard is showing Alesi, I'm here. Be careful, boy. I'm here. I'm going to put pressure on you. Maybe you'll make a mistake, but I'm going to be here and make a decent run anyway.
And look at the lead gap, now down to 15 seconds from Hill to Schumacher. Way too early for Hill to be slowing down, and with all that he's gone through this weekend, I'm sure he doesn't want to slow down, but Michael Schumacher seems to be able to eat into that lead.
Oh, Coulthard kicks the back end out over those rumble strip curbs. They're very severe on a car. This is a good run down to Copse, up to 5th gear, back to 3rd. 120 miles an hour turn in, 140 miles an hour at the apex. 160 miles an hour on the run to Beckett's. No brakes here. Damon Hill is in.
Second stop for race leader Damon Hill. Now Michael Schumacher will of course make up his gap and take over the lead on this stop. Will Schumacher be tempted to try to go the rest of the distance without stopping? Does he have the fuel? Does he have the rubber? Williams crew cam. Now Schumacher is in the pits as well, so that answers my question.
Schumacher had the better pit stop the last time around. He reversed the positions. He was second on the racetrack. After the pit stop, he was then first. We know he was second, 17 seconds behind Damon Hill. Now we'll see, can he make up another few precious seconds? He does already there in his downtime. 7.6 as opposed to 9.2, I believe it was, for Damon Hill. The battle rages here, Bob, still. This is great stuff from David Coulthard.
Alesi fourth, Coulthard fifth. Michael Schumacher, you might have noted, went out on scuffed tires. Tires that have been through one heat cycle. May offer a little bit more traction, a little bit more endurance. And right now, you can bet Michael Schumacher is going to give them a workout. Johnny Herbert in the Lotus, then this battle for fourth place. Here comes Mika Hakkinen.
Coulthard was quicker through Copse the last time. He's quicker through here, but he can't get close enough before you go into Maggots. Just look at these sweepers here, blast through. Negative G, positive G. 145 miles an hour and then downhill. Oh, look at this. This looks good. This looks good. Here we go.
Whoa, wheel to wheel. Oh, the Ferrari comes across his bows, almost drowned out by the noise of this crowd as they tried to push David Coulthard into fourth.
And they love every minute of it down in the grandstands at Stowe. A great run by David Coulthard, but he knows that Alesi has a weak spot right there under braking, so he needs to get close enough again through the sweeps at Beckett's, and we may have another grandstand charge down into Stowe.
He also knows just how much Jean Alesi wants to hang on to that place and what he's willing to do to hang on to it.
I would almost say that David Coulthard didn't quite commit himself to the apex. Now a young, new, rookie race driver will do that. I think in future, when he gets inside somebody, he may just dive down the inside. No, he knew he was on the way to the pit lane anyway. Let's Alesi off the hook for now.
Meanwhile, the countdown of laps has begun for race leader Damon Hill, and you saw that the lead has stabilized just a bit at 15 seconds. Hill over Schumacher. Rubens Barrichello will head for the Jordan pits in just a moment. Barrichello in the third spot right now. Not a great stop for David Coulthard. The cars do look slow in this very wide pit lane. When Jean Todt of the Ferrari team was asked why the Formula One chiefs decided to raise the pit lane speed limit from 50 to 75 miles an hour, his reply, and most folks couldn't believe it, was the cars look too slow in the pit lane. Take that for what it's worth. There is Jos Verstappen running back in the 8th spot in the other Benetton. We'll be right back to Silverstone. Welcome back to jolly old England, the Tower of London, the River Thames. So much living history, including London Bridge. Fell down once, but stands firm and strong as a symbol of this great nation. Meanwhile, into the pit lane comes Rubens Barrichello, having perhaps the best race of his Formula One career. He was third when he pitted. Recall a year ago at the Grand Prix of Europe at Donington, he was third in the race before the car ran out of fuel.
And this year, he was on the rostrum already for Eddie Jordan, to the delight of Jordan. We watched him celebrate as Barrichello shook the champagne. Well, they are in line again for another rostrum position in what Eddie Jordan has to consider his home Grand Prix in his home racetrack. He lives just down the road from the racetrack here. So Alesi still mired in traffic, but very cognizant that David Coulthard has been in the pits, got a second set of tires as Verstappen comes in.
Verstappen was up into the points briefly. He pits in 6th spot. 10, 6, 4, 3, 2, and 1. The points distributed in each Grand Prix from 1st to 6th.
Probably under team orders to take it easy. Get some mileage under your belt. Remember, he was supposed to fill in for J.J. Leto for 2 races, France and the British Grand Prix. However, he may be in this car a lot longer if the rumor mill has any truth to it that J.J. Leto is not ready to come back on a full-time basis with Benetton.
Mark Blundell, terribly bad luck to be out of the British Grand Prix. Tell us what happened.
British.
Well, like you say, bad luck.
British pit announcer back there. Let's take time for our Haviland mid-race recap right now. The race leader is Damon Hill. Among 3 leaders of this race, Gerhard Berger led briefly. Michael Schumacher led the race before being called to the pits by officials for a pre-race violation, we are told. Damon Hill has the fast lap of the race, 1:27.10, compared with his pole lap at 1:24.960. Cars out of the race. Berger, engine problems in the Ferrari. Mark Blundell's Tyrrell done for the day. That's a tremendous disappointment for him. Eric Comas, Andre de Cesaris in one of the Sauber cars. They've been having financial troubles. Gianni Morbidelli in the the footwork. Alessandro Zanardi's Lotus done very early. Martin Brundle blew up virtually on the starting line in his McLaren Peugeot. And Eddie Irvine went off with engine problems on the warm-up lap.
On the plus side, the car has been very fast this weekend, especially warm-up.
And that's Mark Blundell that we're eavesdropping on. Remember, that's a BBC interview that we're just happened to eavesdrop on, but Blundell giving the reasons why he is now out of the British Grand Prix in his Tyrrell Yamaha.
I just caught a snippet of what he was saying there as the pit reporter said the car was going so well in the warm-up, and Blundell's response was, yeah, but that's no good to me now. I need a car that runs well in the race from start to finish. There you see less than a second separates new 6th-place runner Heinz-Harald Freundsen in the Sauber Mercedes from David Coulthard, trying to make his way back. Oh, look at that. There's Coulthard right there. He's already gotten around the Sauber. So he is back into the 6th spot.
So now he sets his sights on Mika Hakkinen, who is hoping that McLaren will hold together without another hand grenade going off behind them. Ron Dennis currently in control of the team that may have its worst season since he took over management of that team in the early 80s. Hard to believe that McLaren have not won a Grand Prix and don't even look close to running at the front of a Grand Prix race this year, as opposed to the tremendous successes of years past.
True, they haven't hardly finished a race yet this year, so very, very tough times and a lot of stiff upper lips around McLaren. The biggest team in Formula One and one of the richest. About 225 employees in Woking, south of where we are here at Silverstone.
No more emotional a time for a racing driver than performing in front of your own home crowd. And we have David Coulthard and Damon Hill performing admirably in front of their home crowd. So this is the man we're watching. Mika Hakkinen is the next man. No, Barrichello is the next man on David Coulthard's shopping list. And we think Barrichello, in fact, is in a good charge against Mika Hakkinen. So there are lots of position changes here in the offing as the last 20 laps of this race come up.
Michael Schumacher, meanwhile, appears to be slowing just a touch. He is now 17.403 seconds behind Damon Hill, who appears, at least right now, to have put his grip firmly on this race. Into the waning laps of the British Grand Prix, Damon Hill leads Michael Schumacher, Jean Alesi, Mika Hakkinen, Rubens Barrichello, and David Coulthard. 2 Williams Renaults in the top 6, the points-paying positions. And good battles still in the offing here before this race is over. Barrichello very close to Hakkinen, barely a second back, and Jean Alesi another 10 seconds ahead.
So Damon Hill firmly in control here, withstanding so much pressure, but looking back down the racetrack. There's David Coulthard just ahead. There's David Coulthard now about to put a move on Michele Alboreto in the Minardi, who has gone well this weekend also. So Damon Hill has lapped everybody up to the top 6 cars.
So many great motor racing traditions here in Great Britain, which became the all-time leader in hosting Grand Prix races a couple of seasons ago, passing which country? The United States, which has had Grand Prix races at 7, 8, 9 sites, I believe. Britain has had just a couple. Brands Hatch, right here at Silverstone, and Silverstone has hosted most of the British Grand Prix over the years.
And here's another battle. That is Rubens Barrichello that you see just sneak into the top of the picture. Mika Hakkinen trying to defend that 4th place, but Barrichello has his eyes firmly set. He was half a second a lap quicker for the last 3 laps, closing up on Mika Hakkinen. And then he's only 5 seconds behind Jean Alesi. Well, that says 0.8 of a second there. It's not 0.8 of a second now. That, of course, was when they went across the start-finish line 1 full lap earlier. So Barrichello trying to crawl onto the rostrum for the 2nd time this year. And what a delight that would be for Eddie Jordan. There will be many, many pints of Guinness consumed by all the paddies in attendance here at Silverstone.
If one of the BBC cameras atop the grandstand could be turned 180 degrees, they could show you the Jordan factory. It stands literally just outside the main entrance gate to this racetrack. Mika Hakkinen. Derek has already gone into the troubles for McLaren this year. The first year in Ron Dennis's tenure as managing director of McLaren International, that they will not score a Formula One victory if that's what happens. Of course, we're only at the end of the first half of the season. This is the 8th race of 16 in the 1994 schedule. McLaren desperately trying to come to terms with the leading teams in Formula One. Formula One is not just about racing on the track. It's about development, and the development of these incredible cars is constant. And the fortunes of war, the balance of power, if you will, changes very, very quickly. So we could see McLaren and engine partner Peugeot pushing for podiums very soon, but it can't happen fast enough for someone like Ron Dennis. Now there's Michael Schumacher, who right now runs 17 seconds and change behind race leader Damon Hill. We'll take a quick timeout and be back for more live coverage. Back live at the British Grand Prix, known variously as the Grand Prix of Great Britain. But to race fans around the world, it is the British Grand Prix. Right now it is led by a son of Great Britain, Damon Hill, 2nd-generation Grand Prix racer, looking for his first victory at his home Grand Prix. He hasn't got it yet, and he's at about the point in the race where a year ago the Williams Renault let him down, and the disappointment was absolutely monumental for Damon Hill. Here's a look at the top 6 in points and where they currently run. Michael Schumacher, who led the race handily before being given a black flag for a 5-second penalty for passing pole sitter Damon Hill on the warm-up lap. Hill now runs in 1st place. He would gain 4 points on Michael Schumacher for the World Championship with a victory here today should Schumacher finish 2nd. Jean Alesi in the Ferrari runs in 3rd spot. Gerhard Berger is out of the race, and that will hurt his points position. Rubens Barrichello runs 5th in the race right now. And Martin Brundle, 6th in points, dropped out at the very start of this race. They see Damon Hill continuing to lap cars, getting around countryman Johnny Herbert. Problems right there, one of the Minardis.
Looks like Michele Alboreto has a foreshortened day. The Minardi with a Ford V8 went reasonably well. Started midway up the grid, but doesn't manage to finish. Now, Damon Hill has been stuck behind this group here for the last 3 laps. He's closed on 6th place and teammate David Coulthard, but he hasn't managed to pass him. Now, Schumacher, as Damon Hill slows down here, if we think he is slowing down, will begin to eat into that lead. But there's precious little time left for Schumacher to close that more than 15 seconds of a gap up to Damon Hill. Maybe Damon Hill is just beginning to control this a little bit, but I think it's a bit dangerous to start to do that.
Through the new Copse corner, they see the gap from Martini 11th to Herbert in 12th. I've mentioned that Britain is certainly the home of Grand Prix racing. If it has a second home, it is in Italy, and there's been big news this weekend regarding the Grand Prix of Italy at Monza. your local newspapers may run a headline saying Grand Prix of Monza canceled. A surprising announcement this weekend from the Italian Motorsports Club. What has actually happened is that Marco Piccinini, former director of the Ferrari racing operation and now the president of the Italian Motor Club Sporting Commission, says that they have withdrawn their authorization for the race. They have suspended their sanction of the Grand Prix at Monza because Marco Piccinini judges that the safety measures voted by the world governing body, the FIA, following the Imola race are insufficient. He doesn't think the cars are safe enough, so they have withdrawn their sanction for the Grand Prix of Italy at Monza. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the race won't happen, but right now it is in jeopardy. And Piccinini, in a statement here this weekend, says that an urgent request has come from the president of the Italian Auto Club to meet with the Italian government and see what they can do to try to save the Grand Prix of Monza. So the race is not officially canceled, but it is definitely in jeopardy. There you saw race leader Damon Hill getting around teammate David Coulthard, which means only the 5 top cars remain on the lead lap. There is Mika Hakkinen, Rubens Barrichello just behind him, and he seems to be drawing away just a bit, does Hakkinen. That is for 4th place in the race. Stay with us. Welcome back live to the British Grand Prix from Silverstone Circuit. Bob Varsha and Derek Daly, glad to have you with us. There is race leader Damon Hill, who took the lead when Michael Schumacher on the Benetton Ford was black flagged. He leads his teammate, David Coulthard, who is actually 1 lap down at this point, but has put in a sterling drive coming from the back of the grid and presently runs in 6th spot.
And the question is, would he still be leading this race if Michael Schumacher was not black flagged? I don't know that. Nobody knows that. But the interesting thing is, Damon Hill did set fastest lap of this race. Michael Schumacher has been in a fair fight since that black flag, and he has not been able to catch Damon Hill. So I don't think there's too many blemishes on Damon Hill's victory here, because he is still so far ahead of Michael Schumacher.
Well, certainly you can't fault Damon Hill. He has done all that he possibly could to win this race, and if he wins it, he deserves it. But not having heard the official explanation at length as to why they chose to penalize Michael Schumacher for running ahead of pole sitter Damon Hill on the formation lap before the green light to begin this race, you just have to wonder. There is Frank Williams, happy to take what's been given to him arguably here today. 2 cars in the points.
If you put that argument to Damon Hill, he'll tell you, remember last year. Last year, it was my race, my win, and it was dragged away from me. Now all we've done is we've evened things up a little bit. Interesting this weekend, Damon Hill was asked if he wasn't a racing driver, what else interesting would he like to do? He said, believe it or not, I'd like to go to the moon. I'd like to have been an astronaut and go sit on the moon. Well, you could say he's already a star, so it's not that far from the moon.
6 laps remaining in this race as Damon Hill goes under the bridge and into the Priory corners. Named for an abbey that once stood close to this racetrack. Several church-like edifices close. There's a corner here once named Chapel, for a chapel named for the famous Samuel Beckett, famous British martyr. In fact, there is a corner here, of course, named for Beckett as well. 5 laps remaining for race leader Damon Hill. We'll take time out, and we'll be back for the checkered flag at the British Grand Prix. Flashing across the start-finish line at Silverstone Circuit, Damon Hill with teammate David Coulthard in close pursuit. They've been this way, even though Coulthard is a lap down, they've been this way for several laps as just a handful remain here at Britain. This could make for a great finish line photograph for the Williams-Renault team.
Although he's a lap down, I think it's a stellar performance by the very inexperienced David Coulthard. Now, Damon Hill last year was slower on an overall qualifying lap than Alain Prost. Damon Hill said he looked at Prost's graph and could see clearly where Prost was quicker. Finally worked out why, understood the racing car better, and now he is quick this year And David Coulthard is probably back where Hill was last year in a learning curve, and a very, very steep learning curve for David Coulthard. What he really needs is more mileage. What he probably won't get this year is all the mileage he needs, because of course Nigel Mansell is due to come back and do the last 3 races for this Williams team.
Interestingly, as Derek mentioned earlier, Damon Hill set fast lap of this race, but he did it back on lap number 11, according to the Olivetti and Tag Heuer timing and scoring. And in all of the furious battling since, it has not been reset. Not by Michael Schumacher, who now runs about 17 seconds and change behind race leader Damon Hill. Not by Hill himself. Now what's here? Is this Coulthard going under the race leader to unlap himself? Yes, with 3 laps to go, David Coulthard gets back on the lead lap.
Well, now that gives David Coulthard an opportunity to get 5th place if anything should happen to Barrichello or indeed anybody ahead of him. Because if he stays behind Damon Hill, as soon as Damon Hill takes the checkered flag, the race is over. Now David Coulthard has another full lap just in case somebody runs out of fuel, or just in case a Peugeot sets off another hand grenade. I'm sorry I had to say that. Oh, Barrichello closing in on Mika Häkkinen. This may become a battle with precious few laps left to go. Something also amusing as we go back to Michael Schumacher. There was a press conference after qualifying. It was actually after Germany. Schumacher in a joke said, hey, if I let you win the British Grand Prix, will you reciprocate? It was actually after the French Grand Prix press conference. Will you reciprocate and let me win the German Grand Prix? Hill said, hey, let's just wait and see. I guarantee you now that Schumacher will say, hey, I did my bit. Remember, we're going to Germany soon.
Actually, Damon said no deals. Now Schumacher can go back to him and say, hey, well, I didn't give you the race, but somebody did, so how about reciprocating? Now here's the battle between Häkkinen and Barrichello. Look how close it's come now. This is for 4th place behind Jean Alesi's Ferrari.
Eddie Jordan must have been on the radio shouting down the radio to Rubens Barrichello to stick his foot in it here and catch Mika Häkkinen. This is a good battle, but I'll tell you, it will be difficult to pass Häkkinen. He was a master at defensive driving. These two battled in Formula 3 in their days.
Interesting comparison here, too, between the McLaren team, as I mentioned, 225 employees, $50 million plus budget. Jordan team, on the other hand, has about 70 to 75 employees and a much lower budget. You can see 2 laps remaining for that man, Damon Hill, the race leader.
And that's back to one of the high-budget teams. $100 million spent to run these 2 cars. $50 million for the engine program, $50 million to build and test and race the chassis and pay the drivers.
Getting back to the Jordan for a moment, give a thought to Brian Hart, who quietly goes about his business of building racing engines. He has a new, more powerful Hart V10 for the Jordan team. You don't hear about him in the same breath with the Peugeots and the Renaults and the Fords of this world. But Brian Hart, an ex-racer himself, is doing a terrific job for that team.
And I myself was the recipient of lots of Brian Hart horsepower in Formula 2 in 1978 when we ran the factory Brian Hart Formula 2 engine, which was the basis for the turbocharged 4-cylinder Hart monoblock engine that powered the Tolman Formula 1 cars of the early to mid-80s. Look at this. Look at the Union Jacks wave. Whoa. What happened? David Coulthard, did he slow down? Is he in trouble?
David Coulthard slowed dramatically. Now he appears to be back up to speed, but on the final lap,
that was strange.
Very strange. Damon Hill goes rocketing by. Now he goes around Christian Fittipaldi running in the 10th spot. At the background, David Coulthard, as I mentioned, seems to be back up on the cams now, but that was something different.
So 7 times Williams Grand Prix have won the British Grand Prix. Damon Hill said he was so emotional in the car after he captured the pole position time. Remember what happened last year? He was on the pole. Murray Walker from BBC got on the radio and says, Damon, you're on the pole. And not seconds later, he lost it to Alain Prost. But Damon Hill said he was so emotional this time when he got the pole. But let me tell you, you are about to see, I'll guarantee, A Michael Schumacher type arm-waving fist in the air from Damon Hill, because there is no better time to win a Grand Prix than in front of your home crowd, the British Grand Prix.
He has only a couple of corners to go. Damon Hill, racing for so long, not only in the shadow of his more illustrious and accomplished teammates, but in the shadow of his late father, the two-time world champion Graham Hill. Well, now, with perhaps a nod to his father's spirit somewhere, he can say, here's something that you never did, Dad, but for the Hill family, I will take a British Grand Prix victory. And there is Michael Schumacher, who has had such a bittersweet race. He won't lose much ground in the World Championship, and his 7th victory of the season may be put off to 2 weeks from now at Hockenheim, where perhaps 250,000 Germans will turn out to see their man, Michael Schumacher. There is Jean Alesi, who will pick up his 2nd podium of the year, and well-earned. The man who says, I must win with Ferrari or I must go somewhere else. And he could have his pick of some of the top rides in Formula One if he chooses to leave the Scuderia. There is a Union Jack brought out by a turn marshal for Damon Hill to wave as he makes his victory lap, having won his first British Grand Prix.
And you see what happened there as Damon pulled away. The Union Jack flag came all the way down over his helmet. He had to grab his hand, drag it up over his visor, and then set off. So Alesi again takes the Ferrari onto the rostrum, but he doesn't like finishing third. Hakkinen and Barrichello. Barrichello's going to get it.
For 4th place, but Barrichello appears to be wounded. Hakkinen is stranded in the gravel trap.
What did we tell you about David Coulthard? Oh, look at this. He can still finish the race in the pit lane. He shouldn't have come in there.
No, he shouldn't.
It doesn't matter if you go across like a wounded duck. You can still finish the race. But now David Coulthard needed to be ahead of Damon Hill. Exactly what we said earlier on, but Damon Hill finished the race ahead of David Coulthard.
Coulthard well back. I don't think he figured in that schmozzle for 4th place. We'll have to wait. There is Coulthard on his cool-down lap. We'll be back in a moment after a most dramatic finish. Live at the British Grand Prix after an incredible finish. There's Damon Hill being pushed into Parc Fermé for tech inspection. He takes the victory over Michael Schumacher, who had a star-crossed race, including a black flag that took him out of the lead. Jean Alesi a clean 3rd in the Ferrari. Then Mika Hakkinen and Rubens Barrichello tangled in Woodcote, the final corner. We saw Barrichello take to the pit lane with a damaged car. Hakkinen was pushed back out of the gravel trap, and at least at this point, he is unofficially listed in 4th place with David Coulthard in 6th. Very strange, Derek Daly.
Well, that will bring up some points of discussion because you're not allowed to get a push start. However, do you determine that Mika Hakkinen was in a gravel trap and in a dangerous position? Maybe they did.
There you see 7th through 12th, Heinz-Harald Freundsen and so on. 13th through 18th, Olivier Panis, Olivier Beretta, Eric Bernard. David Brabham shown in 16th place. And in the background, Damon Hill. Damon Hill accepts congratulations on his first British Grand Prix victory. You can bet it is a very sweet one. As much as Martin Brundle's race was bitter, having felt his Peugeot engine explode in flames when the green light flashed in this race. Now let's take another look at that final corner. There you see Hakkinen spinning off. We didn't see the actual contact. There's Hakkinen in the gravel trap. Barrichello, meanwhile, heads for the pit lane with a deranged front left corner. Very, very strange indeed. Well, we'll have to wait for officials to sort that out. It's going to be a very, very active discussion after this one, folks. But nevertheless, Damon Hill is the winner. On the podium, winner Damon Hill and Her Royal Highness Princess Di, listening to the strains of the British national anthem, God Save My Mother-in-Law. Now there's some reaction from Damon Hill. His wife Georgie down in the pits with Ann Bradshaw of the Williams team, and he accepts that coveted, dreamed about British Grand Prix trophy. Absolutely spectacular, Derek.
17 times. His dad, Graham, tried to win the British Grand Prix and came up short every time. Betty Hill, Graham's wife, Damon's mother, is also at Silverstone, enjoying the moment. Looks like he's about to shed a little tear. Wouldn't be any harm to show a bit of emotion. But Schumacher, for the 2nd time this year, is in second place, and he loves being on the roster no matter where it is, first, second, or third.
And in case you're wondering, when Damon Hill walked up to Michael Schumacher on the podium, Schumacher wrapped him across the bill of the hat in a gesture of hail fellow, well met. Michael Schumacher, he may be angry a little bit on the inside, but he's very happy, as Derek mentioned, to be on that podium, and he was very happy for Damon Hill, and that's good to see.
Talk about building your confidence. Patrick Head gets a well-earned hug from Georgie. What a great day at the British Grand Prix when you create history and win in front of your hometown crowd, fans, family, everybody.
No doubt his mother, Betty, Graham Hill's widow, is here, an esteemed guest at the British Racing Drivers Club. They have a beautiful brick clubhouse on the property. They own this racetrack, and they really treasure their drivers here. Speaking of drivers, here's a look at driver points following today's race. 4 points off Michael Schumacher's lead, but it's still a heady 72-39. Gerhard Berger now drops into a tie with Ferrari teammate Jean Alesi with 17. Rubens Barrichello in possession of 5th spot, and Mika Hakkinen bumps teammate Martin Brundle from 6th with 7 points. In the Constructors' Championship, Benetton Ford with a handy lead over the two-time defending champions from Williams-Renault, with Ferrari very close in 3rd place, Jordan and McLaren sharing 4th. Ode to Joy, now the strains in the background, and there is tremendous joy among these fans. In past years, they would have flooded the racetrack, but not anymore with the new rules and new fences here at Silverstone. Now here is another look at that final corner contretemps between Mika Hakkinen, the red and white McLaren, and Rubens Barrichello, who made his bid for 4th place.
Oh, brave run down the inside by Barrichello. Nowhere to go, breaks the left front suspension, and Mika Hakkinen heads backwards to the gravel trap. But officially, according to our timing and scoring, they both got themselves sorted out. Hakkinen with the push from the track marshals, and we saw Rubens Barrichello drive down the pit lane with the left front suspension broken. However, you can cross the line in the pit lane or on the racetrack.
Checkered flag coverage of today's British Grand Prix is coming your way Saturday, July 16th at 3 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. Pacific. And our next stop on the world-girdling Formula One World Driving Championship will be the Grand Prix of Germany 2 weeks from now on Sunday, July 31st, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time, a bit of a different starting time for us, 4:30 a.m. Pacific. Live from the Hockenheim Ring, certainly one of the fastest tracks in all of Formula One. It has been a most spectacular day. We hope you've enjoyed it with us. I'm Bob Varsha for Derek Daly. Thanks for being with us. So long, everyone.